Hello. This is Jonathan, and you're listening to the Johnny Talks podcast, the place where we help you achieve your financial goals. Hola, amigos. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And if you're a new listener to the show, special warm welcome to you. I really appreciate you tuning into the show. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. I appreciate it even more. In today's episode, we will speak to my friend Rocky Lalvani. He helps business owners to be profitable, and he also runs two podcasts in parallel, Richer Soul and Profit Answer Man. Rocky came to the US at a very young age with his immigrant Indian parents, with only $25 in their pocket. And yet, despite this rather difficult start, both Rocky and his family managed to climb their way up to a successful life. Rocky will share his story with us, and we will explore how he managed to achieve success starting from an unprivileged place, and how you can take steps to where you want in your life. Spoiler alert, it does not happen overnight. This episode is for you if you're working towards living a richer life, how broad that may sound, and want to hear from someone who has worked his way up the pyramid of needs according to Maslow. Actually, it's called hierarchy of needs, but somehow I cannot pronounce it properly in English, so pyramid it is. Anyway, with that said, let's hear the interview. Hello, Rocky. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Jonathan. Thank you so much for having me here today.
It's a pleasure to have you. I mean, we've chatted before, and I thought you had quite an interesting story to share with our audience. And where am I calling you to, Rocky?
I'm in Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. So kind of not really the other side of the world from you, but another continent.
Yes. Pennsylvania, is that a bit north of New York?
I am directly west of New York.
West of New York.
Like if you left New York City and went straight west, you pretty much get to us. It's not that far away. My daughter lives in New York City, so we go quite a bit.
Okay, great. And the thing is, I invited you, Rocky, because we talked a bit before through the FinCon community. And I thought you had a great story that I wanted to share here on the podcast. It's your life story, actually, your journey, because you can tell a bit more in details. But you came as an immigrant when you were young with your parents, and then you didn't come from, let's say, a privileged background, and you worked your way up through your life to being a business owner and to a financially successful life. So maybe we can start with the start, Rocky. So can you share a bit how you came to the US?
Absolutely. So my parents immigrated here when I was barely 2 years old, and they were in their early 40s. So they had me much later in life. And essentially, they were starting over. So they each had a relative, meaning a brother or sister here in the United States. And when we first moved to the country, they were limited in their currency conversion back then. Today, it's a lot easier to move money around, a lot less restrictions. But back then, they were allowed to take $25 with them.
Wow.
The good thing is we had family here, right? But, at the end of the day, we were living on the wrong side of the tracks. Around that same time, my parents had a lot of friends who came over that they knew. And everyone kind of started off the same way, just figuring out how do you live the American dream? How do you survive and thrive in a new country? And very quickly, everyone was moving up the economic ladder. So I would say probably within 10 to 12 years, you're going from the wrong side of the tracks to living in very nice homes and to having the things that you wanted in life. Now, it's funny, everyone thinks right now we're in the midst of turmoil, and we are, but when my parents came, we were in the midst of the race riots. So I grew up in, back then, what was essentially a black and white world as a tan kid. So I didn't fit into any group. Now America is much more diverse, I think, than it was back then. It's different. But the thing with adversity is I think it builds a certain amount of character, and it builds a certain amount of resilience, and it kind of gives you that fire in your belly to go forward and to do.
Yeah, and where does that come from? Because I understand it's a difficult situation. Some people, like your parents, they build this resilience, and they fought their way through it, and they went from the one side of the tracks, as you say, to the other one. But maybe it's not the case for everyone, and for some, it's easier to let go and to say, okay, it's difficult, it's not my fault or whatever, or any effort is useless. How do you find that fire? How do you push through?
I've been trying to figure this out, because if you can figure that out, you can light fires in people. I don't know where my fire came from. I knew that from a young age, I knew I wanted to be a millionaire. And so I just would always study money. I would study the stock market. That was the only way I knew how to make money, was investing. And how do you get your money to grow? And a lot of what I learned was incorrect. Like, what I know now is night and day to what I learned back then. But certain key principles still apply. And the bottom line is, you have to spend less than you make. And it doesn't matter where you are on the economic ladder. I don't care if you make $10,000 a year or $10 million. The principle still applies. And I think too often people don't get that. And it's because we aren't, I don't know how it is in Europe. In the United States, we aren't taught money. Money is a taboo topic. And schools don't teach you about money. I have an MBA. They didn't really teach us about money. I don't know what you see on your side.
Well, I studied finance as well, but even though, I studied corporate finance, marketing, and, even some theory around the econometrics and stock markets back at university, and then, it went to other topics. But really to tell you, today we're going to study, hey, later on you will make some money. Maybe you can put 10%, 15% away and put it in the stock markets. And here is how to analyze a stock. Or maybe you can invest in index funds or whatever. And another way is, for example, real estate, just to take some famous ones. But not really. I mean, we've done all the calculations. We know how to calculate interest rates and compound effects. But really, I never had a teacher tell me, hey, this is a way to grow your wealth. So once you start making money, here's how to make it even to secure yourself financially. No, I didn't have that, even though I studied finance.
And it's true. And so you kind of were taught the same thing I was, that the stock market is how you build wealth. And I don't think that's true for most people. The stock market tends to be where you store your wealth. You've got to build your wealth somewhere else and then put it into the stock market. And I think that's a step people don't always realize.
And maybe just going back to your parents, I'm just curious about that, Rocky, because you said your parents went, after 12 years, they started to live where they wanted to live on the better side of the city. So what did they do specifically? Because it seems quite fast to me.
So basically, the theme of what they did and what I learned growing up was, number one, negotiate everything. And Europeans and Americans don't realize that the rest of the world negotiates everything.
Yeah, it reminds me of this chapter in Rami Sethi's book, Negotiate Like an Indian. And your parents are Indian, so it's really funny. And yeah, please go on.
And that's correct. Negotiate like an Indian, because we do negotiate. The other thing they did was they spent a lot less. Like they kept that gap between what was coming in and what was going out as big as possible. But they also believed you could live a rich life without spending like living a rich life. So find the opportunities to have nicer things without paying the price for them, or at least full price. How do you live a nicer life, 10 or 20 cents on the dollar?
No, very good. And then this is the principles that made you successful financially as you grew up, Rocky?
It was, because for most of my life, I had a normal corporate job. I did make good money, but the biggest thing I did was automate my savings and increase the amount that I was saving all the time. So you have different plans in Europe than we do here. Here we have something called a 401k, which is tied to your work. And before you get your paycheck, they'll take a certain percentage out. And so I signed up for that. And over time, I I kept turning it up until I hit the maximums. And the companies I worked for would allow you to buy company stock. And so I would buy company stock. And then once I got my paycheck, I set up, after the money came into my bank account, automated savings going into a brokerage account. So again, the money was constantly being saved. And then the other thing was to pay off the debts as fast as possible. Stay out of debt, and you have tremendous cash flow. So once I paid off the house, I used the money from the mortgage for savings. I didn't add it to my lifestyle. We've lived a nice life, but we've lived way below our means. And by creating that big gap, that is the way to kind of build wealth. And anyone can do it. Because if you think about it, if you're making $50,000 a year, you're used to that lifestyle versus somebody who's making $250,000 a year. They're used to their lifestyle, but each of you has your own goals. The guy who's making 50 grand doesn't need to save like the guy who's making 250 because he's not used to that lifestyle. So if you can create the gap, and the bigger the gap you can create, the faster you can retire. And then it's a matter of doing other things. So for many people, like these days, is, can you do a side hustle? Do you invest in real estate? Like I've done both of those things. And they have helped me to grow my wealth even faster.
Wow, that's great to hear. And then Rocky, I'm wondering, because those principles, they're healthy, they make sense. I mean, spend less than you earn, grow the gap between your expenses and your income. I mean, it's just a sound advice, but have you never made any mistakes, any errors along your path during your journey?
I did. I think the first thing when I was young, even though I started my automated savings, I also started, because I was making good money, I started spending. And spending where, it's only $20 a month. That's no big deal. Oh, it's only a couple of bucks here a month. That's no big deal. Oh, there's this, and that's no big deal. It's not hard to very quickly end up with your cash flow crushed because you signed up for all these little things. And today, between Netflix and cable and a cell phone bill and all of these other things and software and gym memberships, it doesn't take long that you've got all these things that are automatically coming out of your account, making other people wealthy and not you. And so you've really got to watch. And that was the one thing I learned. I quickly found out that I was getting crushed with all these little payments. And so I had to very quickly stop doing that. And it took a while to get out of them.
Okay.
And I think the second mistake was not understanding how to properly invest in the stock market. I think too often many people speculate and gamble in the stock market. They don't take enough time to really think through how to invest properly. And there's too much hype, and then there's too much emotion. And so while everyone says you buy low and sell high, the statistic shows that everyone buys high and sells low. So it's a big part of that, I think, is understanding who you are, understanding your investment philosophy and your goals, and then making the appropriate choices to follow those. And it sounds simple, but I think it's a lot more complicated.
Yes. Of course, it's all about the implementation. And you said yourself, I had a corporate job. And what are you doing now? You're retired already, or you have another corporate job, or you quit? What are you doing today?
So I retired from corporate America because I had enough. And because I had built wealth, I had the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
But I also realized, my original goal was, hey, one day I'm going to retire and sit on a beach and drink Mai Tais. And I started to realize that was not going to be fun. It might be fun for 3 months, but that's not really the life that I wanted to live, even though that's what we all think we want to do. So I spent years trying to figure out, what is it that I really love doing? What is it that I love doing that people are willing to pay for? What is it that I'm really good at in that same sphere, and then kind of putting that all together. So what I learned, and this was kind of shocking to me, but then again, it's not, right? You went to a finance degree. I have an MBA. You would think business owners understand business and how to take care of their books. And the reality is they don't. So most business owners don't understand the business of business.
Mm-hmm.
Most accountants are very good at accounting, but accounting is not putting money in the business owner's pocket. It's recording transactions. And when I learned that there was such a gap for business owners and how much they were struggling with finances,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that was my skill set. I grew up with electronic spreadsheets, and I love spreadsheets, right? I love numbers. I love analyzing stuff. And so what I do now is I help small business owners, and I help them focus on always being profitable.
Yeah.
And again, it's the same principles we've talked about, right? Spend less, right, than
Mm-hmm.
you bring in.
Grow
So
that gap. Yeah.
grow the gap, right? So grow your profit margin in your business. Too many business owners are people, right? They're just like us. What do? Lifestyle creep, right? Oh, I need this fancy thing for my business. No, you don't need it. You want it. Same thing with our personal lives, right? We need that new fancy TV. You don't need it. You want it. And that's okay, but make sure you can afford to pay for it. So I help business owners do what I did, which is to cut their costs and live within their means.
Mm-hmm. And how long because you're mentioning, I was trying to figure out what I like, what I'm good at, etc. So how long did that process take? Was it a matter of sitting down 2 hours and that's it, you found it? Or is it like a process, which I believe is the answer? But how did that work out for you?
I think it took me like 7 or 8 years.
7 or 8 years, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and during that time, you start testing things out. You try them out.
Mm-hmm.
You see what the world says. You see if it's a need, and then you keep kind of pivoting. So my first pivot was to help people build wealth, right? Mm-hmm. You would think that I was shocked. If you could sit down with me and pay me a few $1,000s and I could guarantee that you were a millionaire, you would think that people would do that. They won't.
Yeah, that's a super return on investment. $1,000 and I get $1 million.
Yeah, well, it would probably been like maybe 4,000 or 5,000, but you get $1 million, and yet people weren't willing to pay that.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. So that's where you have to test markets and see what happens. And part of the reason that is because in order to get to the $1 million, it wasn't going to be overnight. It was going to take you 20 years. Mm-hmm. Well, nobody wants to take 20 years. Everybody wants it yesterday. And then they don't get it, and then they make all the wrong decisions, and then they're constantly off track.
Okay, and you have this helping business owners with their profit, but you run as well your own podcast. I mean, you talk about money, you help people, you still help people with their wealth. I mean, like individuals.
I don't usually do individual coaching anymore. What I do is I teach the principles on the podcast.
Okay.
So in the principles on the podcast are not just money is one little piece of the puzzle. I tell people, you can go out and buy a Ferrari, but if you've got a flat tire or an empty gas tank, you're not going anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Life is like that too. So when you look at your life, money is one part of it. Your health is a big part of it, because when you lose your health, you give up all your money to get your health back, right?
Yeah.
And so what are you doing health-wise? I think Europe is much healthier than the United States. You have much better laws, much better food quality than we do here, in the sense, in general, in the way people behave. It's not that we don't have quality food. It's that everyone's eating bad food because they're, for whatever reason. It tastes good because they've engineered it to taste good, or they don't know any better, or they're too busy.
Yeah. So
you have your health, your wealth. Mm-hmm. The most precious resource that we all have that we ignore and we waste is time, right? Mm-hmm. You give away time so easily, but you can never buy back your life. You can never buy back time. Then what are you doing for relationships? Right? At the end of the day, we are people. We need to be with other people. And how do we do that? And the last area we talk about is spirituality. And I don't tell people any religious beliefs per se, but We are spiritual beings at nature. And however you define that, it's up to you. How do you kind of fit into this universe? And what is it that you want to live? And all of that comes together. And we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, is to have a life plan.
Yeah.
Define for yourself across these areas and any other areas that you find important to you. Define your life. Once you define your life and you say, this is what I want, it becomes so much easier to achieve it. Because when you have a target, it's easy to hit a target. You may not be perfect, but you can at least get going in the right direction. When you don't have a target, you're just wandering and you're lost. And I think for most people, they are wandering and lost because they don't have a target. They were told a target: go to school, go to college, get a job, get married, have kids, retire. You'll have a wonderful life. Well, I don't know if that's exactly a wonderful life for everybody. And for a lot of people, if they don't enjoy their work, then that's no fun. People who have a purpose live longer.
Mm-hmm. And then, Rocky, one question I have, because you came from, let's say, modest background, and some people who may come from a middle class or even rich background, maybe it's harder for them to find or to ask themselves those questions about what's my life purpose, what's my mission, because everything is kind of planned and figured out. So maybe they don't even realize. It's harder for them to realize, okay, I need to hustle. I need to, maybe not hustle, but I need to work hard. I need to work on my mission. What do you have to say to that? I mean, it's easy to drift when you don't have to make effort from the start.
It is very easy to drift. And I don't think it matters where you started.
Okay.
Because I've talked to people who started with wealth. I've talked to people who started with nothing. Mm-hmm. We all face the same struggles. We're human. Yeah. And so we all have those same problems. I think what's happened, though, is when you went to school, there was never a class that taught you how to define what you wanted in life, right? Mm-hmm. You went to the guidance counselor and they said, you're good at math. Go into some math, go into accounting or engineering. You're good at languages. Go be a language teacher. I mean, nobody actually, they looked at one skill and said, you're good at that skill. They never asked you if you liked it. No one ever sat down and says, hey, what do you really want from life? You're just told, you're kind of sorted, ranked, and pushed. And even parents. So here's the thing. It's counterintuitive. Parents care more about your safety than your happiness and success. Mm-hmm. So they hold you back, right? Mm-hmm. When you have these big dreams, they're like, no big dream for you. I want you to be safe and happy. But safe and happy don't go together.
No, that's absolutely true. And okay, for the school, the thing is, at least when I was 17, 18, when you need to make a bit a serious choice to go to university or not, and to pursue whatever career you want. Okay, I didn't know what I wanted, so it's a bit different there. But yeah, it's I absolutely agree. And then for the parents, I can recognize the behaviors or when I quit my previous job, it was like, oh, but you're quitting a safe job. It was a good company. I said, no, it's going downhill, and I don't enjoy it anymore there because I've been there for a number of years. So I'm looking for something else, more fulfilling, or at least a new challenge. And, it was a bit foreign to them. And it's, I'm not a job hopper, but I usually stay in a company for a few years. But yeah, I don't know, they like this stability indeed. And then starting kind of this podcast and a bit venturing. Okay, it sounds a bit risky, but okay, I'm doing it from a safe place for now. But yeah, I see where you come from, and this stability thing, it's really important. But I think it's number 2 in the pyramid of Maslow, the need for security, I believe.
And so you have to work up that pyramid. Mm. But the question you have to ask yourself is, are you working up that pyramid? Are you working on each level? Are you taking steps to improve yourself to get to that point of self-actualization? Mm-hmm. Most people just stay in their lane. They don't challenge themselves. And for a lot of people, I don't know you guys are much better with work hours in Europe than we are in the United States. In the United States, people are work, 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 work. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Chase, 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 chase. It's like, live life. Europeans are better about living life than we Americans.
Yeah, we are a bit more lucky on that. I mean, there's still some days of hard work, but at least, we have more holidays. I think we're a bit more laid back with regards to work. I mean, sometimes it's like, well, it's 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Ciao, I'm leaving. And then, then you live your life. You do whatever you want. I mean, maybe not now in COVID, but you can go do some sports, whatever. And you have a life next to your work during the week, usually.
And I think for a lot of Americans, they don't. They're too busy. Like they come home from work, they're late, they sit in traffic, and then they come home and they have a million kids activities. We run our kids ragged with all these crazy, everyone thinks their kid's going to be some sports hero. And so they spend their entire weekend all over the place playing games and spending an inordinate amount of money on it. And then they wonder why they're broke and struggling. And then the kids end up hating the game because it's no longer fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean that behavior is present here as well. But I see what you're talking about, and it's a bit disconforming to the society because everybody has a son or a kid or daughter that plays baseball in the US or soccer here or something. I need to register him. He needs to do an activity. He needs to do sports. Yeah, he needs to do something. And then it's kind of a pride as well. So I see that as well. Yeah, it's society how it is, and
And I'm not against sports. I coach sports, so I'm perfectly fine. But I think there needs to be balance.
Yeah, you don't need to do it because everybody else is doing it. Just because it's okay. The kid wanted. Maybe he needs to get his butt off the couch and not play PlayStation, but he needs to do something. But you don't need to compete amongst parents or whatever,
Find the right amount, and go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, very good. And then Rocky, for the listeners, you already said, well, look, it's important to sit, and it's a process that can take years to define a bit where you want to go in life. And I want to ask you, so you said, what were your inspirations to really think about that? What motivated you to start this process, actually?
So I had the money, right? I chased the money and I had the money and I wasn't thrilled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that really started the question of, hey, wait a minute. I have this money. What is kind of going on? And you mentioned a book earlier. I was part of, Ramit had a brain trust community way back when. It's no longer around. And as part of that, people started asking those questions. So I was part of a community where we were all trying to figure out, what do we really want? Mm-hmm. And as part of that was part of my help in growing, is meeting other people, figuring out what they're doing, figuring out and defining your dream life, your dream job, and doing all those types of things and building your skills constantly. So I got into personal growth, and I took action. The problem with personal growth is most people don't take action. They go to an event for a weekend and then they go home and go back to what they were doing.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's great. I'm motivated. And then no action.
No action.
Yeah.
The key to everything is taking action. But the key to taking action is you don't need to do a lot. The difference between success and failure is teeny. And if you just do a little bit and you keep doing a little bit and you keep taking one more step, over time, you will get better. You will improve. And as I said, it took me 7-8 years of thinking and working to get there.
So
over time, you will get better.
Yeah. And would you say now I am in the place where I want to be, or are you still working on developing some skills or developing growth towards a place where you want to grow? What is your ultimate goal in the end, Rocky?
I'm in a very good place, but there will never be stopping of growth, right? So I will continue to get better, but I'm really happy where I'm at currently. But that just because I'm happy doesn't mean I'm stopping.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm not running. right? I'm strolling now and I'm enjoying the journey.
Great.
And everyone can do this. It doesn't matter where you are or what your circumstances. Everyone can do this because you just have to look at where you are today and get one step better tomorrow. There are people who are, quadriplegics doing amazing things, right? There are people, who started with nothing, who've got horrible backgrounds, who have done amazing things. I think most people don't realize all the work that they put in behind the scenes. And that's the bottom line. It's a long journey. You keep showing up and you keep taking a step.
Yeah. And what I like what you said is it does not need to be big steps at a time. It can start with tiny actions. And just to give a concrete example, it can be as simple as doing 20 push-ups every day, maybe even 10, or reading 5 pages of a book a day. It's just building that constant habits and developing those habits, running, 100 meters. Everybody can do that. And then maybe, after some time, maybe you try 200, 300. I don't know. It's just small things. Start small, because then how can I say, the blocking, you will not be blocked. It will seem easy. So the importance is to start tiny, and then you will see where it gets you.
And that's very true. And you also have to believe that you can succeed. If you don't believe you will get what you believe, right? So if you believe you can't, you won't. And if you believe you can, you will.
Absolutely.
It's a choice you make.
Okay, great. Now, I really like this philosophy, Rocky. And Rocky, I think we've come at the end of the show. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's quite inspirational, but as well concrete. Like with actionable steps. Now, I really liked your story, and thanks for coming on. I think it's really valuable for the listeners. And Rocky, before we leave, as you know, we always have our 3 quick fire questions. So are you ready for it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So Rocky, we talked a bit about the stock markets and some real estate. We didn't go into details, but what has been your best investment so far?
I think my best investment over time was Disney stock, because I bought it back in 1992 and I've held it. So it's gone a long way since then. And that was, I don't know, is it luck or is it just time?
Yeah. How much was it back then? The stock price?
So it's been split adjusted over the years, but it was probably like $8 or $10, $12. I think it's like 150 now, 160. Yeah. So it's not an Apple story, but it, still a nice return.
Oh, fantastic. And then what is the best book you can recommend to anyone? It does not need to be a financial book, Rocky.
So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Yeah. The book that I like is Living Forward by Michael Hyatt. It's how to stop drifting and create the plan for your life. So most people, I think, struggle with, well, how do I create this life plan? How do I figure out what I want? This book will take you through the action steps to create the plan. And if you buy the book, go to his website, because there's a bunch of freebies which include other people's life plans. And I find when you read other people's life plans, it becomes easy to say, I want this, I don't want this. I want this, I don't want this. Yeah. And it helps you to build your life plan. And he lays out exactly how to do the whole program.
Okay, excellent tip. I'll check it out as well. And then last but not least, what is the best purchase you can recommend for under $100?
So I think we already decided that, right? Go buy books. It could be that book. It could be another book. But if you think about it, the average person takes 3 years to write the book, to put down all of their knowledge into that product. And you can buy the knowledge of Warren Buffett for $20 or $40, right? You can buy the knowledge of so many, Winston Churchill. Those books might even be next to free, right? Go buy the knowledge and read the books and learn about their lives. And you will start to see that they rhyme. There are certain habits that they all had in certain ways that they did things. So that the best thing you can do is buy books. It's by far a bargain.
Yeah, absolutely. For the return you get, and if you, as we said, if you read and you take action on those books, it's again a super return on investment.
That it is.
Yeah, very good. Well, Rocky, it was great to have you. And where can the listeners find you and find out more about your podcast? Your maybe there's some business owners listening. So where can they find you, Rocky?
So I have 2 podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
One is called Richer Soul, where we talk about a lot of the same concepts that we talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is called Profit Answer Man, and that is more so for the business owner. And they're on any podcasting platform that you tend to listen to your podcasts on.
Okay. And any social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram?
Just Google my name. All
Okay.
of that stuff will come up. There's
Okay.
only one of me.
Anyway, I'll link it all up in the show notes so people can find you as well. So they don't need to Google, but you can still Google if you want. But okay, fine, great. So Rocky, thanks again. It was a pleasure to have you on, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you learned something from it. I certainly appreciated speaking to Rocky and having him share his personal life story, which I believe was very inspirational for many of us. And the great thing is that Rocky came as well with actionable tips for us. Speaking of which, let's head to the key takeaways for today. Number 1, negotiate everything. Negotiate like an Indian, as we said. And then spend less than the rest. You will still be able to live a rich life without spending that much. Number 2, automate your savings and work on increasing the gap between your expenses and your income. The faster you do it, the faster you can retire. And I also want to mention one thing that I really liked about Rocky's story. Rocky still saved money when his house was already paid off. He did not increase his lifestyle, which he could have easily done, replacing his mortgage payments by new purchases or expenses. Number 3, avoid some common errors. So be careful with all the small recurring expenses, all the subscriptions, the gym subscriptions, Netflix, etc. It's good to have them, but just be mindful and cut the ones you don't need. One other error was to not invest properly. Think it through and don't let your emotions guide you here. Number 4, define your life plan. Identify the following. What do you really love doing? What is it that you do that people are willing to pay for? What are you good at in the same sphere? This takes, of course, years to test and pivot. For example, for Rocky, it was 7 to 8 years. So it's not done overnight, unfortunately. And then the thing is, once you plan, it will be easier to go into the right direction, to go towards your goals. And one thing, again, I really liked about Rocky's story is that even if you have enough or a lot of money, it is not that will make you happy. It's working on that dream life and that dream job. That will make you happy. And last but not least, the key to everything is to take action. It does not need to be big things, just start small with tiny actions. Get a step better every day and believe you will succeed. You will get what you believe. So that was it for today. Thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to me. Make sure you subscribe in Apple Podcast. And of course, please do not hesitate to contact me. If you have any questions or feedback, send me an email, john@johnnytalks.com, or connect through social media at Johnny Talks on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And amigos, once more, thanks so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.